It's a year since I had my first ever live and in-person Formula One experience in Singapore. It took about 17 years for me to actually be able to afford it and was, well, honestly, it was facilitated by a death in the family, but reflecting on that got me thinking. How much would it cost for a Kiwi to attend every Grand Prix in the 2026 season? It's spreadsheet time. Kia ora, I'm Kimmy. I talk about Formula One in the world's second worst accent, and this one's gonna be a long one, so settle in, grab yourself a snack, and get ready for a hell of a lot of numbers. And yes, I have a microphone like this today because I'm still dealing with the whole road noise situation. Meet Hypothetical Harry. They're from Aotearoa, New Zealand, which, as you all probably know, and about 11% of you actually experience, is a small South Pacific nation down at the bottom of the world and is a minimum 4-hour flight from pretty much anywhere. What this means is that unlike Europeans or even North American, Middle Eastern or Asian fans, Harry doesn't really have any affordable option for getting that real-life, noisy, smelly, exhilarating Formula One experience, and the most many Kiwi fans can hope for is that they're not working on those few Sundays where they can watch a race live without having to get up at some god-awful o'clock in the morning. Even Melbourne is a big expense, thanks to the absolutely obscene price gouging that the hotels do on that weekend, and tickets are almost impossible to get anyway. So yeah, thanks Ticketmaster. Shout out to Events Travel for making our Australian Grand Prix trip actually happen this year, not sponsored, but without them we would have been watching from the sofa, which in hindsight probably would have been a more comfortable experience, but I mean, it's all about being there, right? Anywho, you get the point. Getting out of this country can be pricey. Most Grand Prix destinations are a long-haul flight, or to be fair, mostly ultra long-haul flights away, or all of them actually except for Australia. So exactly how much would it cost for a Kiwi to go to every single one? Now, before anyone gets down in the comments and starts talking about sports washing or political reasons not to do this is entirely a thought experiment and not at all any kind of endorsement. There's countries that host F1 Grand Prix that I wouldn't be super chill with visiting, but getting into all that isn't the point of this video. You'd also have to literally quit your job to do this, and a lot of the events are already sold out, save for hospitality packages. It's just for fun, and maybe to freak some people out a little bit. And even if you're not a New Zealander, this one might be interesting for you too, as I break down a lot of the costs here. So first off, let's talk about how I'm working this all out. I'm not looking at super budget options here, nor am I looking at premium experiences. No hostels and no Ritz-Carltons. It's based off how I personally, Hypothetical Harry, likes to travel and attend events. So in most instances, unless we're talking about short-haul flights when hopping between double or triple-header destinations, all air travel will be on full-service airlines. I'll look at LCCs or alternative solutions for shorter trips, but suggesting you spend 10 hours on a Scoot red-eye is honestly just cruel. Hotels will be 3-star at a minimum, but preferably 4, and I personally have a preference for general admissions for moving around reasons, but Harry wants mostly grandstand tickets with a few exceptions. And to be fair, some events don't have GA anyway. There's also points where it will be difficult to work out exact pricing due to how far out Harry's planning here, and things often change closer to the event. My experience is that hotel prices sometimes go down when places haven't sold out. Airlines have sales, etc, etc, so there will be a certain level of estimation involved in this. I'm also basing flights out of Auckland just because that's where our largest population centre is. Obviously, for those of us who live in regional centres, good luck with not paying Air New Zealand your entire life savings just to get the connection. I also, as I previously alluded to, will group together certain races to avoid the need to return to New Zealand after every one. Not only would that be prohibitively expensive, but also be almost impossible due to flight times and utterly pointless. By the time you get back here after one weekend of a double header, you'd be right back on the plane for the next one. It's not just double and triple headers that I'm grouping together here either. You'll understand why later on. Travel days are also aimed at getting you to the destination on most of the time Wednesday at the latest, because Thursday is often a valuable day to scope out the track and the transport situation, or just enjoy the destination. And there's no scenario where I'll have Harry flying immediately after the race, because trust me, that is not worth it. This year in Melbourne, the people in front of us left before the race was even over because they had to catch a plane to Sydney. This is also all in New Zealand dollars, but I will put up the current equivalent in USD, pounds and euro in the corner. So let's kick it off. Melbourne. Depending on your style of travel, you'll probably want to check a bag because this trip is going to be a 3-destination stop, packed for Australia in the summer and China and Japan in the spring, because the season kicks off with a double header and we're going straight to China after Australia. There's no point in coming back and then just going back to Asia a week and a half later, so from China it's off to Japan. Use this theory for the rest of the video. And in the grand scheme of things, an extra $30 to $50 to check a bag is worth it if you're not an insane person like me who's trying to get down to one bag travel all the time. So, outbound flight to Melbourne on Wednesday, Harry's looking at around $500 to $600 for a flight with included checked bags. Jetstar's about $500, Air New Zealand and Qantas are about $600, but those flights will go on sale between now and then, so I'm going to put the Jetstar flight in. Just for reference, this year Biz and I got flights from Nelson via Auckland to Melbourne outbound for like $380 each, so you can see how much of a difference an Air New Zealand sale can make, especially when you consider it's an hour flight from where we are in Nelson up to Auckland. Plus you're on one ticket, so if anything goes wrong, then it's the airline's problem. But back to the point. Then in Melbourne for a nice hotel in CBD with easy access to the circuit, Harry's looking at probably around $600 a night. No, I am not joking, this is the actual cost. So for check-in Wednesday, check-out Monday, that's about $3,000. I'm going to call it 3.5 just to be on the safe side, because honestly, those prices, you just never know. General admissions tickets are $360, but I've given Harry some advice and told them they don't want that because it's hideously oversold and they'll have to be in the queue on Sunday at 6 AM. Plus, viewing positions can be quite low in the good corners, so let's pick a grandstand ticket for this one. Stuart, because Harry can see some passes there, that will set them back $780 for a 4-day pass. Transport is basically free once you're inside the CBD, and Harry's not going to have time to go to the burbs anyway, so all we got here is airport transfers. Unless you're alone, an Uber or a taxi is the way to go here. That's going to be about $140. Food, let's be real, Melbourne's not cheap. The hotel's probably going to include breakfast, so let's budget $30 for lunch and $50 for dinner. $20 for a drink out or some snacks, which comes to around $100. So $500 all in. Then let's say they spend another $300 over the course of the weekend on souvenirs, random stuff that just seems to eat money, and most importantly, merch at the circuit. So for Melbourne with no outbound flight, Harry's already at $5,720. You can see now why it took me 17 years of being a fan before I actually attended a Grand Prix, right? Now it's off to China. This is the point where I'm going to start using Google Flights to check pricing, but I will check to see if they're real fares and include a checked bag before adding them in. Melbourne to Shanghai non-stop will cost you well over $1,000. So Harry's going to go with a short layover in Guangzhou on China Southern, which is about $500. GP tickets aren't on sale yet, so I'll have to go with this year's pricing, which to be fair, is insanely cheap. You can get GA for about $100 New Zealand, and it's a really cool track, and I think to experience it that way would be a pretty neat thing. So Harry's going to pick that option here to save a bit of money. Now Harry, they're going to be really knackered from all that walking, so let's pick a 5-star hotel this time. I know it sounds like high roller stuff, but Shanghai is very, very affordable for hotels. Now remember, they're here for a full week this time before heading to Japan, so this one's going to be from Monday to Monday. You can get a DoubleTree or a Sofitel or a Grand Mercure for about $200 a night or less, so let's pick that one. 7 nights at $200 is $1,400, budgeting $50 a day for food, that's $350, and transit is pretty negligible as you can use the metro to get around, and there's a station at the circuit, so let's call that well, we'll round it up to $5 a day because you'll want to see the sights. $35. And I'm just going to stick that miscellaneous souvenirs and ephemera budget of $300 in for this whole thing, I think, which might seem obscene, but we all know how much humans spend on random, unnecessary stuff that makes us happy. Come on now. So that's a budget-friendly $2,685, even with a 5-star hotel. Not the Ritz-Carlton, but still something really nice. On to Japan, Harry's going to fly into Tokyo for this one because with a break in between Shanghai and Suzuka, they want to take the chance to do the Hokuriku Arch while they're there. Inbound direct flight, we're going to be landing at Narita because to fly into Haneda, it's quite expensive, but that means a budget cost of around $150 or less here. For a bit of a trip around the country, this is where I'm going to start factoring in tourism costs because let's be real, it's cheaper than spending a few grand to get back to Auckland Auckland and then return to Asia in about 10 days. If you pick up a regional JR pass, then you can get around on bullet trains and other forms of mass transit for a flat fee. So let's call that $350 plus another couple of hundred for activities, and I might round that up as well, so we'll call it $600. Now obviously hotels are going to vary vastly depending on where you're staying, and some might be cheap business hotels, or you might opt to stay somewhere nicer or a Western chain. So to account for those kind of things on the longer trips, I'm going to estimate for average based on the country. For Japan, let's call it $200 a night. For something decent, even though it's cherry blossom season, this is pretty realistic. And then a bit of a surge for Harry's hotel in Nagoya during the weekend of an extra $100, so 15 nights would be somewhere in the region of $3,400, but probably a little bit less. Food, I'm going to budget $50 a day, and that's going to feed you well, but again, allowing for Harry's purchases during the Grand Prix. Public transit will again be on local metros and trains, and your most expensive trip will be the long daily commute from Nagoya to Suzuka, so I'm allowing $200 there. The Grand Prix tickets themselves, we all know Japan can be a little bit wet and windy if you get unlucky, so this time it's grandstands and Harry splashing out on the main straight where they can be undercover. That's about $1,700, but obviously you've got much cheaper options. Take your poncho, take your brolly. And then we have a return flight back to New Zealand where Harry's best option is really just heading back to Tokyo and flying Air New Zealand direct. So that's going to be, well, the quoted price is $2,600 for a one-way flight, which is not normal, and will go on sale for under $1,000 probably at some point. So let's split the difference and call it $1,800. So the Japanese Grand Prix with 2 weeks in the country having a grand old time, Harry's looking at about $8,900. Next, they're off to the first Middle Eastern mini-season, Bahrain, and then Saudi Arabia. Now, Harry can get to Sakia cheaper by doing a combination of Air New Zealand and Etihad with a self-transit, but the best option is Qatar all the way with an 8-hour layover in Doha. More comfortable seats and all on one ticket, so no luggage uplift, and it's the airline's problem if there's a delay. Go stare at the beer for a while, I guess. That's going to be $1,800. Turn 1 grandstand tickets are an absolute bargain at $740, although again, there are cheaper options, but no general admissions. A mid-range hotel is probably around $250 a night, and Harry's going to stay until Tuesday this time, so $1,500. Food is around $70 a day, so $400, and it's likely that transit may be free because hotels do often provide shuttles, so that's a big fat $0. Although I'm going to stick in $200 if they want to see a little bit of Bahrain while they're there, and they need to either hire a car or a taxi. $4,940 for Bahrain, and then off to Jeddah. The flight to Saudi Arabia is about $200 on either Saudia or Fly Dubai, but Harry does have to make a stop. The direct flights are prohibitively expensive, so they're suffering with this one. GA is available for Saudi, so I'll pick that one, which is about $200 based on last year's pricing. A hotel right next to the circuit is going to cost Harry $280 a night. 6 nights, that's $1,620. Transit, well, nothing apart from a car to and from the airport, so let's call that $120. Food, again, we're going to budget $70-ish a day, and their return flight back to Auckland, again, choosing one carrier, Harry's flying Emirates this time, for $2,300. So that's a total of $5,140, nearly half of which is getting back to New Zealand. Woof. Harry's next race is Miami, but then there's a bit of an awkward decision to make. The first flight I got served up here is a horrific 3-stop via Vancouver and Toronto. So Harry's good, thanks. But thankfully, there's an Air New Zealand flight to San Francisco with onward travel to Miami with United for the same price. So that's an easy pick, $1,300-ish. Now, Miami is definitely a pricey one. We're looking at minimum of $1,700 for grandstand tickets. So Harry's going with a 3-day campus pass, which is their name for general admissions, for around $800 based on last year's pricing. Hotel Indigo in the middle of the city is currently the cheapest looking option at about $440 a night. So 6 nights of that is $2,240. Food and drink, I'm going to have to up the budget here and call it probably realistically $120 a day, so $720. And Harry's going to live on the edge and get the bus to the stadium. That's going to set them back about $15 a day. But Miami has a free transit system to and from the airport, so that's only going to be about $45 $75 total, not allowing for the odd Uber, so I'll round that up to $100. There's a 3-week break in between Miami and Canada, so in this scenario, I'm going to send our hypothetical slightly insane person back to Auckland for a bit of a break. That's going to cost another $1,900 if we pick the one stop, but still cheaper than staying in the US and Canada for that in-between period. Although with current power prices in this country, it might be cheap for Harry to turn off the hot water cylinder, empty the fridge and just stay away. So $7,760 total for Miami. Now, Montreal, we're once again booking a return flight with Air New Zealand and United, this time via LAX for about $1,250 in and $1,700 out. We're going to go with a grandstand here, so that's another $1,500. Hotel, we're looking at about $300 a night for something nice and in the middle of the city near the circuit, so that's another $1,800. A weekend metro pass is about $30, plus another $30 for the airport transfers via bus. Food again, we're going to budget $100 a day for a total of $6,710. Now it's time for the European season, and this is where we start to do things a little bit differently. Because of the bloody long flight to get to Europe from New Zealand, this one's going to be one big long stint from Monaco until the summer break, flying out of Hungary on Monday the 27th of July. To get from Auckland to Nice with one stop on Emirates, it's about $1,800. Now, let's be real here. You're probably going to have to look for a place to stay that's not a hotel in Nice, because the minimum's going to be about $700 a night, but that's the hand we've been dealt, so that's $4,200 for 6 nights. Grand Prix tickets start at $3,500, and don't say anything about watching from the fan zones or trying to find somewhere to go up on the hill where the view hasn't been obstructed. That's not the plan with this experiment. We're coming all the way from New Zealand, and we want to actually see cars on track. At least the train's cheap, so that's about $20 a day. Food, we're going to budget a bit more here because we're being forced to live the high life, so $150 a day, which takes us to a total of just under 11 grand. We're definitely getting the tram from the airport for this one. Next, we're off to Barcelona. We're flying EasyJet this time for $75. Hotel is going to be around $500 a night. Transit to and from the circuit, plus the airport and a bit of tiki touring around, another $30 a day on average. Food, we're going to estimate $70. And the Grand Prix tickets themselves, after such a budget blowout last weekend, it's general admissions o'clock, $550. Total, $4,495, which is the cheapest we've had since China, and you can probably come down quite a bit if you look a bit harder for a hotel. Now, there's a 2-week break between Spain and Austria, so we're going to take 9 days in between to work our way up the continent by train, picking a couple of stops along the way to kind of just go out and see the sights. Let's budget about $300 a day for that one all in. Transit, places to stay, food along the way, totally doable, and we'll probably get you some pretty decent digs. So we're not factoring in a flight cost to Austria, but it is costing us about $2,500 to travel in that direction. GA tickets from Austria are about $390, and considering the lay of the land there, I think that's a good pick when you consider the price of a grandstand ticket. You might be game to camp and soak up the atmosphere, and realistically, with the travel times from Graz or Vienna, this is probably the best call. A pre-set up site will set you back $2,600. It is glamping after all. Maybe that 90-minute train ride isn't looking so bad, actually. Or maybe better to buy camping gear and then give it away when you're done. No, we're putting it in. Camping it is. Food, well, you're kind of stuck with the circuit food, although breakfast and lunch are included in the hotel tent camping experience, so we'll call that $100 because you're going to be consuming copious amounts of booze. Transit is just the cost from Vienna to Spielberg and back, so that's about $100. In total, Austrian Grand Prix weekend should come in at around $3,690, but unlike previous weekends, this does not include any of the in-between days. Next, it's off to the UK. Flights into London from Vienna are currently sitting pretty high at around $300, so I'm going to put in $250. Silverstone is a bit of a fun one to get to. You have to get the train to somewhere like Milton Keynes and then transfer to a shuttle bus or drive, which can be its own nightmare, and Harry could camp again, but that's pricey and they already did that last time, so they're going to stay somewhere like Banbury, which has a shuttle bus service to the track. Honestly, so far this one has taken definitely the most research. It's a little bit tricky to figure out where it's possible to stay, and most places aren't showing availability, so allowing for surge pricing and comparing it to current rates, we'll call it $500 a night. We'll do that for 5 nights, so $2,500. Then it's $17 a day for transit over the weekend, so let's round that up to $20 and call it $60. Then there's getting to and from London, but I'm just going to plop that down the tourism costs and call it a day. Tickets are a fun one because we're back to dynamic pricing for 2026. Absolutely fucking vile in my opinion, but here we are. At the moment, we're at a minimum of $1,600 for a grandstand ticket, so Harry's going to have to save some cash here and go for GA+, which is 4 days at $960. Then there's food. It's expensive at Silverstone, so we're going to allow $120 a day once again. Then it's another week and a half before Harry has to be in Belgium, so once again we're plopping in that $2,700 for a little bit of European exploration before arriving in Verviers on the Thursday. Now, this is the first time I opened up Airbnb on this little journey because I don't like it, but Google Hotels unfortunately had zero availability for anything other than hostels. For the pleasure of potentially being spied on or having to clean your own accommodations, you're probably looking at a minimum of $3,000. So to avoid long transit times, just like with Austria, Harry's camping again. This time, the more basic option, which is about $1,400 and comes with parking and all of the basics they need to put their head down. Food, I'm budgeting $100 again. Daily transit, once again, is $0. And this one's one where Harry will want a grandstand ticket, so we're going for something in the middle at around $1,200. All in all, pretty affordable weekend at $3,700 compared to the others, but Harry's camping in the most basic way possible beyond bringing their own stuff. Next time, it's off to Hungary, and Harry's flying from Brussels to Budapest for the extortionate Ryanair price of $120. They're going to take a grandstand seat on the third chicane for around $800. Transport is negligible. It's the metro plus a free shuttle, but in this instance, we're going to splash out and allow $60 a day for a taxi or a rideshare instead, plus another $15 a day for exploring the city outside of the weekend and to get to and from the airport. A nice hotel at this time will set you back around $400 a night, and remember this is from Monday to Monday, so it'll be higher over the weekend and lower for the days leading up. This is just what it averages out at. So $2,800. Food is pretty cheap in Hungary, so we'll allow $50 a day. Then it's time for the long schlep back to Auckland once more, and the best deal there is Qatar via Doha once again at $2,300 one way. You are racking up the miles with Qatar. That's a total of $6,910 for Hungary, and coming into the summer break, we're already almost over the 85k mark. Thanks, Monaco. Also, those killer ultra long haul flights. Whew. Now, I did warn you this was going to be a long one. As you can imagine, this video did take me quite a long time to put together, and I know nobody asked for it, and somebody's probably already done it before, but if you are enjoying it or getting any value from it, please do give it a like. It costs you absolutely nothing. YouTube doesn't show that you've clicked on anything to anyone else, and it helps my channel. If you'd like to see more from me, then subscribing to my channel is a great way to start. I make videos about Formula One most Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thanks also to my patrons, and the extra special thanks again to Daryl for the super thanks last week. I'm thanking you twice this week because it was very generous. If you'd like to become a patron and support what I do here, the link is down in the description and it's here on screen. As well as helping keep my fridge filled with beer, you're also contributing to my ability to buy things to improve my videos, like my new cheap teleprompter that's not made from $6 worth of stuff that I bought from the warehouse. You'll also gain access to my championship tracking table, which you can download and use to calculate different season outcomes or modify for your own purposes. And there is a discount code on there now too. I haven't officially launched the thing that is a discount code too, but you know, you can go and check it out if you want to. So thanks once again for watching, thanks to my patrons, thanks to Daryl, and let's get into the home stretch. So we move on to race one after the summer break and the Netherlands. Getting to Amsterdam from Auckland is pretty straightforward. As usual, Harry's going to arrive on the Wednesday, and they're flying on one ticket with Singapore Airlines and Air New Zealand with a transit via Singapore for $1,500. Even though this event had tickets allocated by lottery and is long sold out, seeing as it's the last ever Dutch Grand Prix for now, I'm going to take the price from the indicator values on the official site. This is just for fun. It doesn't matter that it's sold out. It should be a pretty awesome event and is pretty reasonable compared to others, so we're going to go for a gold grandstand price, which is about 1,300 New Zealand dollars. Harry will be staying in Amsterdam and travelling out to the circuit, which will cost about $400 a night for something a little bit out of the CBD, so 5 nights for $2,000, a bit less than paying for an equipped campsite at the event, and much easier to get some sleep, I imagine. The train is $25 a day, so we'll allow $35 for the additional getting to and from the the hotel, as well as airport transfers via public transit. Harry objects to getting taxis when there's a perfectly acceptable PT option, by the way. They've got one small roller case in a backpack. It's fine. Food, we're going to allow $100 again, but this is because Harry will probably drink most of their calories. And remember these food and beverage budgets, consider that it's expensive to buy stuff at the track. So all up, the Dutch Grand Prix comes to $5,920. Next, Harry's on the plane to Bologna, and we've run out of Google flight states, so we're basing things off what looks like a pretty normal price for that day of the week now, about $250. Same issue with hotels, so we're now reaching out to Reddit and using our own experience of surge pricing to make an estimate, probably at least $500 a night. Probably more, but for once I'm going to be hopeful. Transport around $15 a day to and from the circuit via train, plus around the city during the rest of the week. Food, I'll call that $100 a day. And the Grand Prix itself, you definitely want a grandstand for this one so you don't get trampled trying to find a good spot at arse o'clock in the morning on race day. So $1,900 or near as makes no difference for a spot on the Variante Alta, which is the cheapest grandstand ticket currently available. $6,140 for Monza. Now on to the last of the triple header, the inaugural Madrid Grand Prix. Now this one's a bit of a shot in the dark. No historic data on hotel pricing, too far out to find anything on Google, so based on a normal Monday, a flight should be around $80 at the most, and for somewhere to stay, I headed to Airbnb again to see what I could find. Thankfully, Airbnb hosts are organised and onto it, and it looks like for something really nice in a good location, it's going to be about $250 a night. Food, usual European budget of $100 a day. Transit will be on the metro again, so say $10 a day with a bit extra to allow for sightseeing. And as much as I personally would prefer GA for this one, Harry's going to do a grandstand ticket just because it's a first event and who knows what the viewing's going to be like if you don't have an assigned seat. So $1,700 to be on a corner, which before we factor in the flight home is under $5,000. So not too bad. Although I imagine if Harry were to book a hotel instead of a holiday rental, it would be a little bit more. Flight home is again via Doha on Qatar, around $2,200. And then next up we have two standalones. Now the smart person will probably do a bit more traveling and go straight on to Azerbaijan or do Baku and Singapore in one shot. But hypothetical Harry here has responsibilities back home and they miss their cat. So we're going to go back and forth for these ones like one of those crazy people who review airlines for a living. I totally don't watch any of those guys, not at all. So the return trip to Baku isn't as bad as you'd think. Looking at average pricing again, being in that general vicinity, we are flying Qatar because it just seems to beat Emirates and Etihad every single time. $3,400 return, which we're going to split down the middle because I can't get the individual flight pricing on that one. I'm going to assume a surge pricing of around 200%, so a decent hotel near the track will probably set you back around $350 a night, $80 for food and drink, nothing for transit because you won't need it, and it costs like $1.50 to get to and from the airport. $1,100 for a grandstand ticket, and that brings Baku in at $6,950, half of which is flights. Then on to Singapore, again a return trip, and I know this one, you'll definitely be able to get it for around $1,800 return direct on Air New Zealand, usually about $800 in and $1,000 out. Everything in Singapore is well connected, but a hotel right next to an MRT station but still walkable to the circuit should be around $500 a night if you're prepared to go with a local chain and a hard bed, which Harry is because they have a bad back. Again, 5 nights, so that's $2,500. GA tickets are about $750, and this is an event where GA really is the best bet. You are so damn close to the track, it's crazy. Food you can easily get by on $60 a day, even with a couple of beers, although circuit food is expensive, and so is the booze, so we'll bump that up to $80. Transit, again, it's peanuts, and it is a very walkable city if you can handle the heat and humidity, but we will allow $10 a day. So Singapore comes in at around $5,800. Next up, it's the first of the 2 season-ending triple headers. First, Harry's heading to Austin, where they'll go on to Mexico City and then Sao Paulo. Inbound to Austin, the standard price seems to be about $830 on Delta with a layover at LAX, and it is Circuit of the Americas, so you have to get Turn 1 tickets. Minimum minimum $2,000 for those. Now, Harry could go GA and fight it out for a good spot on the hill, but with this one, they're not going to risk it. It's one of their favourite corners on the entire calendar. Search pricing for hotels in Austin is obscene, so Harry's moving down to a 3-star hotel for this one, which will set them back about $500 a night, and you have to be in quick. Anything close to the middle of the city at the moment, a few weeks out from this year's race, starts at around $900 a night. So that's another one in the $2,500 column, because hypothetical Harry can be stupid sometimes, but not that stupid. Food, they're going to be really dropping the cash with this one, so we're back up to $120. And transit is a bit of a difficult one, as Kota is not well connected to transit, so the 3-day shuttle pass is probably the best option here at around $280 if you don't want to have to risk struggling to find an Uber when you need one. Then another $80 for Harry's airport transfers because they don't want to get the bus. All in all, Austin comes in at $6,590. Then we're on to Mexico City, where Harry will be spending the week. A direct flight is around $280, and at the moment, the sheer size of Mexico City and the massive variety of options means that Harry can easily get a 4-star hotel for under $200 a night, even for this year. So that comes in at a measly $1,400 for the entire week. They're going to take a mid-range grandstand seat, which means sitting in the stadium section, for around $1,850, and transit is so negligible, I'm just going to put in $20 for the whole thing, and they can probably ride the metro forever for that. Food, we're going to allow $50 a day, which takes into account the higher circuit prices but good value offerings outside of the track, which brings the total to a not whole lot over $4,000, which honestly is almost half taken up by the Grand Prix ticket. Mexico is another race that doesn't offer GA though, so there's no super cheap option there. Now it's time for Harry to head to Sao Paulo. Flight prices fluctuate quite a lot and there's no direct option, so we're picking the Avianca flight with a stop off in Bogota for around $500. Grandstand tickets will cost you about $1,000 and a 4-star hotel about $350 a night, or $2,450 for the week in something like a Novotel. Again, we're going to budget $80 a day for food and drink, and public transit is nominal at less than $2 a ride, so we'll call that $20. And for the trip home, thankfully, Latam flies into Auckland, so that's all one ticket with one airline, just to stop in Santiago for just over $1,200. Probably the second most remote airline route in the world, the Santiago to Auckland one. Just a little fun fact there. All out, this is about $17,000 for the entire triple header. Then this is it, Harry's final break until heading to Vegas and then on to the Middle East for the last triple header of the season. Hopefully the fight's still raging at this point, and they're not dead on their feet from all the flying and regretting everything they've ever said about Formula One drivers having it easy. On the inbound flight, Harry's flying Delta with a transfer in LAX for $720. They'll take a lower end but not the cheapest grandstand ticket for $1,500 for a 3-day pass. And don't worry, they're not going to stay in Circus. Harry's going to stay at the Conrad for what should be around $370 a night, but the resort fee will probably push that up to about $500. Food is expensive in Vegas, but tickets come with a free allocation, but we're still going to budget $100 a day for stuff like alcohol and eating out away from the circuit, which hypothetical Harry absolutely wants to do. They're like weirdly obsessed with Guy Fieri's trash can nachos. No trains on this one, but about $100 to get to and from the airport with a rideshare, which surprisingly makes Las Vegas one of the more affordable options, coming in at $5,600. Even factoring in a return flight, that's still a pretty good deal. Now Harry's off to Qatar. Most deals for this flight come in at around $1,100 to $1,200, but they're not convenient times and require 2 stops or an overnight layover. Sometimes 2 stops and an overnight layover. So they're flying Alaska and Qatar with a layover in Seattle for $1,400, which might seem awkward, but honestly it was the best route. Now the Qatar Grand Prix is an absolute steal at just $280 for general admissions, but because all of the viewing areas are around the main straight and you're not allowed near any of the turns on the back half of the circuit, this is definitely the time for a grandstand. But even then, the last corner will only set you back $550, so it's not a difficult call to make. This might even be a race where it's worthwhile choosing a hospitality package package, but Harry's super tight, so he's not going to lay the extra dosh, even though he's already spent well over 100 grand on this thing. A decent 4-star hotel like the Melbourne pick will cost about $400 a night. I'm going to pick something a little bit cheaper, like 4 points for $350, so that's $2,450. Then food, $120, transit, next to nothing on the metro, so $10, plus the cost of getting to and from the airport, which again is so cheap, you may as well not even think about it, so we'll call it $20 for the whole trip. So all in, Qatar will cost Harry about the same as Vegas. Now this is finally it. You've stuck around for the last one, and for that I applaud you, because this has been an absolute marathon of listening to me talk really quickly, and I hope you could understand everything I said. You're a real one. Abu Dhabi. A quick jump from Qatar, Harry's flying Etihad for just under $400. There's not really a budget option here, and yeah, I do object to spending that much on a 1-hour flight, but realistically it's not so different from Aotearoa sometimes. $1,200 for a grandstand ticket. Harry's going to pick a Corniche for $550 a night, which is spenny, but unfortunately just kind of what it is for a season finale, and it's on the low side. A painful $3,850 for a week. Unfortunately, not as painful as the transit situation, because staying on Yas Island is ridiculously pricey, like $2 grand pricey. So no matter what, they're going to be either stuck with roughly an hour and 45 on public transit, but at least it was only going to cost you $3 each way, or catching a taxi. Getting someone to drive you is probably the best bet here. We'll call it $30 a day. It's pretty cheap. Harry's also going to look into hiring a driver for the weekend as well. We'll round it off with another $100 a day for food. Then finally, after more than 9 months of crisscrossing the world and making their own Charlie Kelly conspiracy board with all their destinations, it's time for hypothetical Harry to fly home for the final time, which they're going to do from Dubai because it's about the same price and they don't have to fly via China with an 11-hour layover to avoid paying close to $4 grand. So Harry's going to pay a premium and get a taxi from their hotel to Dubai airport for a couple of $100 and enjoy the ultra-long haul flight that haunts my nightmares for $2,500. They could also head back to Doha for a bit less, but honestly, hypothetical and now slightly hysterical Harry told me they'd rather not spend a minute more than absolutely necessary in any more airports. So this is it. The end of the road. In total, Harry spent about $6,000 on experiencing continents to avoid flying home, $7,500 on merch, souvenirs and random stuff that just added up without them realising, $2,835 on destination transit, $11,420 on food, $58,410 on hotels, more than a third of the total spend, $28,070 on Grand Prix tickets, and $34,925 on flights, all for a grand total of $149,160. And that's not even factoring in airport taxes and visas and electronic transit authority fees. And I know what you're thinking. This could have been done so much cheaper. Harry could have stayed in hostels, cooked their own food, and flown a combination of Jetstar, Scoot, Indigo, and Fly Dubai to get back from the UAE. But Harry's damn near 40 now, and they're way too old for that shit. And that crazy budget airline itinerary actually probably wouldn't have been much cheaper than the direct flight. Maybe even more expensive, to be honest, and it would take you like 3 days. So what do you think? If you won Lotto, would you do this? I think I would. That's it. I'm just going to sit here and stare off into the middle distance and visualize being rich. Visualize being hypothetical Harry. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. Thanks once again to my patrons and to anybody who has ever given me super thanks right here on YouTube. That's just such a super awesome thing. And the first time I got one, I was like, what? I'll see you all on Thursday for my usual race preview. This time it is Singapore. If you missed my video that I posted yesterday, I'm going to put it right here or somewhere anyway. And that's it. And I'll catch you next time. Ka kite.